Hello to all of my kings and things and chicken wings in the audience, and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be answering the question, how would I judge King of Drag Season 1? This program I thought was so delightful. I had such a good time watching King of Drag. It was really wonderful. It really became like an obsession for me where like on Sundays I'd be like, oh my god, it's King of Drag Day. Obviously, if you're watching this video and you watch my channel, you will obviously know that I've not made an All Stars 10 video yet because I could not get invested into All Stars 10 worth shit. But King of Drag really actually did grip me because it felt different, it felt unique and new, and I had a really good time watching it. And if you haven't watched it, please go and watch it. It is quite literally free to watch. And I think it exists as such like a feel-good program that I really hope we get a season 2. And, it just gets to grow and grow, higher production, higher budget, and it grows into like a big thing. But enough gushing, let us get into the video. The rules to remember, as always, are the season has to be as long as season 1 originally was, which was 6 episodes, 5 competitive episodes, and the finale, and the performances and challenges need to be based off of how well someone did or how people would predict they would do. So I'm not just going to put somebody in the top when they were originally in the bottom, or vice versa, unless there's strong fan support for that being the case. The goal, as always, is to act as if I'm the head judge and craft the season however I can imagine to make it as fun and eventful as possible, while also being fair with my judging of the season by combining my own personal tastes and what was shown to us on the show. Before we get into the meat of the video, though, please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy yourself. I greatly appreciate all of the feedback and, all that stuff. And, people, if you ask for it, people are more likely to do it. So I kind of have to. Anyway, let's get ourselves into episode 1 here. In episode 1, we had the boy bands challenge. And they had to split into 2 groups of 5 and write verses and, make choreo to 2 different songs. This challenge was done literally, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, there was a 90-minute time period from the assignment being given to them being on stage, which is absolutely crazy. I think it was interesting because it really, you know, it forced them to work under like pressure, and, kind of go with whatever they came up with and kind of live in the moment and not really overthink it, which I think is positive. But also it meant that they literally, again, only had 90 minutes from start to go time, which is just not enough time really to get consistent group choreo, to write a comprehensive verse, to know your words to your verse down pat. Like, it is hard to do that in 90 minutes. I was performing in a drag show this past weekend, and the number that I did for that was a number that I had spent like a month ideating. Like, I had thought of the song I wanted to do, thought of the reveals and the outfit I wanted to do with it, and, you know, kind of combined everything, put it all together, and just slowly did it over the course of like a month, which is, how it works a lot of the time in the real world. Drag shows get announced, usually weeks beforehand, and, from that moment on, if you're a performer in the show, you have the ability to start workshopping what you're gonna do. And so the fact that they only had 90 minutes, it didn't lead to as good of a product as they could have had. Like, I wish they would just tacked on an extra day of filming, uh, so that they had, like an almost 24-hour period from start of assignment to execution of it. You know what I mean? But anyways, that's really my main and only gripe with this show, with the season of television, was that they should have gave it more time here. But regardless, originally, King Molasses 1 and Big D and Alexander the Great were high, and I kept that completely the same. I completely agree with it. King Molasses's verse was so phenomenal. I mean, it really was the one verse when I was watching where I'm like, okay, this is what I want to hear. It was so wonderful. And especially being able to talk about yourself and about everything, and also able to hype up your teammates in your verse as well, all in the span of like the 15 seconds that they had. I don't even think it was 15 seconds, but all in that span of time is just fucking crazy. And I just think it's like really admirable as well. Like King Molasses did a phenomenal job. Now originally, King Perkasex was low, which I kept, and the bottom two were Henlo Bullfrog and Tuna Melt. But I don't think Henlo did that bad. Like Henlo's verse was, I don't think out of all the verses, it wasn't one of the best written verses. I would say it's probably in the bottom half, of just in terms of like the the way that it was written. And I would say Henlo Bullfrog is probably probably is the one just outside of the bottom for me. But like I don't think Henlo did bad at all. I think Pressure K, well, I don't think Pressure K. You can see in the episode, Pressure K did not have his lip sync fully down. Even if he had the lyrics down, it certainly didn't look like he had the lyrics down. And I don't know why this wasn't really called out, considering the fact that Tuna Melt fucking up their lyrics was the reason that they were in the bottom two. So if this was me, I would say, Henlo didn't really do that bad. Henlo should have been safe. Pressure K and Tuna Melt should be in the bottom two for the same reason, and Perkasex can maintain his low for this little split mishap. I think that it feels like the most fairest, judging of this episode to me. And then Dick Van Dyke, Buck Wild, and Charles Galen King are all still safe. So the bottom two here of Pressure K and Tuna Melt are going to have to break dance for the final thrust. And I do think Pressure K would come up with something funny for this. I can imagine that. I can imagine there being some bit having been done that really would have sold it. And I do think regardless, Pressure K did better than Tuna Melt in the challenge, so I do think that he would stay here, and Tuna Melt would still sadly go. Episode 2, we had the Dong Show, which is the play on the Gong Show, which is also a play on Snatch Game, which is a play on Match Game. It's so cyclical. It's so self-referential drag, and I love it. But yeah, they had to impersonate celebrities and perform a talent as those celebrities. Originally, King Molasses won the challenge, and Dick Van Dyke and Big D were high. I did decide to give Big D the win here and swap King Molasses down to a high placement. I do think King Molasses is every time I say it, it makes me laugh. I do think King Molasses's uh, uh, impersonation of Hourglass was the best impersonation of the night. It was just the impersonation itself was so hilarious to me, and I think was really such a good pull for this, and I really thought it was great. But I think Big D's talent show was the best, just in terms of how much it made me laugh. Like it made me laugh more than everybody else's. And so I think, with the fact that King Losses did better in one, Big D did better in the other, it kind of is down to a splitting hairs thing with me. And I just decided that the win should go to Big D. It just felt like it made more sense to me. Dick Van Dyke does maintain his high placement. Originally, Charles Galen King, Pressure K, and Henlo Bullfrog were all safe. As you can see, I did decide to switch Henlo Bullfrog to the low placement and Alexander the Great to the safe. But I do think Alexander's could have definitely been taken farther. I still think that it was a thought out, concise bit. And I do think the bit worked, even though it could have been pushed further. I do still think the bit worked. Henlo's performance, though, An impersonation just really didn't grip me as much as really all of the others above it. I do think that the talent was a bit like nonsensical, but like not in a as much of a gripping way as like Big D's was. And so I do think Henlo should have been low here, but I don't think Henlo did bad enough to fall into the bottom two, which was between Buck Wild and Percocet. I decided to keep that the same. So them as the bottom two are going to have to do like a 1 minute stand up routine for the judges. And Percocet definitely does do better in this, so he is going to stay. Which does mean Buck Wild still goes here, which is upsetting because I do think Buck Wild is one of the people who really like if if he had just like a slightly different challenge layout. If Buckwild is somebody who I could have seen making it a lot further than they did if things were, shifted potentially. But I do think they did, where I do think they were the bottom two for this challenge. And Perka absolutely did better than them in the final thrust. So I think it just makes sense, sadly. So Buckwild is still going to leave, and we're going to move on to episode 3. In episode 3, we had a double elimination, which I did decide to maintain as a double elimination. Because, with 6 episodes and 10 people, you do run into the issue of, do you want to enter the finale with 5 people? That feels like too many. So a double elimination would have had to happen at some point. And I do think it just makes sense to do it here. Also, it's like kind of in the middle of the season, so it kind of, it splits it. It feels like it makes sense, at least to me. For this challenge, they had to make a horror look and do a performance associated with that look. And I pretty much kept the placements the same, except for the fact that I kind of gave them different names. Looking at the judging on the Drag Race Wiki, which obviously isn't official, but does provide the kind of consensus thought as to what the show wanted everybody to think the placements were. They had Percocet is winning, which I maintained. King Molasses is high, which I maintained. Dick Von Dyke and Henlo Bullfrog is safe, which, I technically maintained. I do think Dick did better than Henlo and was my third, so should be high. And then Henlo Bullfrog I kept as safe. Has Big D is low, which is the fourth from the bottom, which for me in this scenario where we have 8 contestants would be a safe, and then the bottom 3 still is the bottom 3. So really the placements are the same. I agree with everything the judges said, but I don't think the contestants did as bad as I feel like the judges made it seem like they did. Like Dick deserved a high placement here. I don't think Big D did bad enough for a low. I think that the judging was really fair though otherwise. And in the bottom 3, they are going to have to act as as if they're being killed like in a found footage death scene. And I do think Charles was the best in this. It wasn't by like a grand stretch though. This was definitely the final thrust where I was like, okay, I feel like this should have been workshopped a little bit more. Like I think what would have been better is if they had like a 1 minute scene, like a script for like a 1 minute scene that they all had to perform specifically, and whoever did their best interpretation of that scene, you know, would theoretically stay and would be voted to be saved by the judges. Having it be like a found footage thing where they're like running around the man cave and being like, "Oh my god, no, no!" Like it's like okay, like sure, but also I think this could have been done more effectively with like literally a piece of paper with like a 1 minute scene on it. But regardless, I do think Charles did the best, so I'm going to keep that. And Alexander the Great and Pressure K are still going to go home here. And we're going to move on to episode 4. In episode 4, they had to create aquatic themed prom looks. And present them on a runway, and also like campaign to be prom king. And I thought this challenge was fun. I liked the setup a lot. And I kept the placements pretty much the same as they were originally. I really only made one change, and that is that originally Perka Sex was low and Dick Von Dyke was high, but I decided to swap that because I did not agree. I don't think Dick Van Dyke's look was particularly the main reasoning I switched them is because I think that their speeches were both about the same level of effectiveness, so to say. Uh, but I think just purely looking at the looks, Dick Van Dyke's is one of the least prom looks, I think, of the whole bunch. And Perka's is arguably the most. Like, I think just purely looking at the looks, Perka did a really good job and I think deserves a high placement. And I don't think Dick did bad enough to be in the bottom two. But I do solidly think that he did worse than the three people above him. So I decided to keep Henlo was winning, Big D is high, and just add Perka to the high set. And then also decided to keep King Molasses and Charles Galen King as the bottom two. For the final thrust challenge, they had to choreograph a cheer routine. And I do think King Molasses was definitely better and also has a much better track record than Charles. So it just makes sense for King Molasses to stay here. So sadly, Charles Galen King is going to go. And we're going to move on to episode 5. Episode 5, I did a little bit of fuckery with this. Originally, this was an episode that had a bottom 3 that eliminated 2 people, but I did not think that was particularly correct. Like, we could have entered this final episode with the top 4. It would have been perfectly fine. It would have been okay. But we didn't. And I was like, we could have done it that way. And I wanted to do it that way because I didn't want to do multiple double limbs. It just doesn't feel right to me. In this episode, they had to design a look based off of materials that they found from a place called Remainders, sorry. And then do a lip sync performance to Good Boy by Arcs. And I really struggle between whether Henlo or Dick deserves this win. I did decide to give it to Henlo, though. I like to look more personally, which doesn't mean Dick does not have a win at the end of the season in my judging, so I'm sorry. Uh, but yeah, I really did like Henlo's look better. And so the bottom 3 was Big D, Percocets, and King Molasses originally, and so I had to decide, who did the best out of the 3. And I do think King Molasses did the best. I would argue that his look wasn't the best out of the 3, but I do think his performance solidly was. And in a field where, like, I think all of their looks were kind of circling around the same, amount of likability for me. Uh, but King Molasses solidly had my favorite performance out of the 3. I think it just makes the most sense to save him here and keep him safe. So Big D and Percocets are going to be the bottom 2, and they are going to have to do an interpretive dance. And I don't think Perca did bad at all in this challenge originally, and I don't think Big D did bad either. But Big D, I do think, did better. So since we already know that how these two would have performed, I do think Big D would have stayed here. So sadly, Percocets would go, and we're going to move on to the finale. In an event surprising no one, probably, uh, King Molasses is still going to win the season. In the finale, they had to do a performance just of whatever they wanted for the judges. And I do think out of the performances we got to see, those being King Molasses, Dick Van Dyke's, and Henlo Bullfrogs, King Molasses did the best, then Dick Van Dyke, then Henlo Bullfrog. And if we're eliminating 2 to get to a top 2, which I do think makes the most sense here, because they did have a top 2 like lip sync to determine who won. If we're doing that, it's already determined that Henlo is not making the top 2. But the question is, what does Big D do, and how well does he do? And I do think he does really well in this. I'm imagining some fucked up comedy thing that's gonna make me giggle like a little kid, and that I would like. And so I do think that Big D probably would end up being my second favorite or favorite. And so Big D and King Molasses are going to be the top 2, and they have to perform uh, a lip sync to the song King by Frankie Simone, which is the theme song of the show, which I liked. I think that's a very, it's like a circle. It's a full circle moment. I love it. And King Molasses did a great job. And I think was shown to be a better lip syncer than Big D. throughout the course of the competition. So I definitely would give the win here to King Molasses. Here are the track records for the season. As you can see, the final four, literally 3 of the 4 of them have the exact same track record, with Henlo actually having the best, which is ironic considering that Henlo did not make the top 2. But yeah, that is going to be it for this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed yourself. Leave your thoughts, feelings, and opinions down below. As always, I will leave my other social media handles linked down below if you want to go follow me on those. Again, thank you so much for watching, and as always, take care. Bye-bye.